Hey everyone, you are listening to another episode of the All Things Private Practice podcast. I'm your host, Patrick.Casale, joined today by Dr. Maelisa McCaffrey, a psychologist out in Southern California, who is a expert specialist in QA, quality assurance prep, for therapists who are trying to make sure they're doing things the right way and just protecting themselves. And we're going to talk about neurodivergence too. They may not feel like they tie in, but I'm glad that they do because we're going to make a subject that might sound necessary but not so interesting, really exciting and funny to talk about today. And I'm glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I am very excited to be here and I'm always happy to talk about it. Even though it doesn't sound like the most exciting topic, I know that it's one that's on top of everyone's minds.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit about that. So in your bio, it says that you make this fun and that you make it funny. And I, you know, I'm not someone, I definitely understand the importance of like doing things a certain way and like protecting the business and the clients and ensuring like everything's up to code. But I also realize like my eyes sometimes glaze over when I'm talking about this stuff. So tell us about like why you're passionate about this and how you do make this fun or exciting to talk about.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the way that I make it fun is by actually making it like realistic and practical. So, one of the things that most of us from day one learn is that the message we receive is that paperwork is punishment, right? So it's always this thing of like, even if it's a supervisor teaching you and they're the best supervisor and you love your clinical experience, it's like, oh, and then we have this shitty documentation we have to do on top of it, right? And that's kind of how everybody talks about it. And um, the thing is, it doesn't have to be that way. And I find that a lot of therapists think, for example, like I'll share templates with them and I create all these checklists and cheat sheets and things to make writing notes, for example, really easy. And then people will tell me, is this it? Like, is this all I have to do? Are you sure this covers insurance? Are you sure this meets whatever requirements? And then people will tell me, oh, well, I started using your templates and it only took me 5 minutes to write a note. And I was like, no, there has to be more. This can't be good enough. Right. So we have this mindset that it has to be really hard work and it has to be painful to do. And once people find that it doesn't have to be either of those, it can actually be easy. It can be quick. And actually you can, one of my big things is not just talking about here's how you meet insurance requirements or, here's what a board might want to see, but actually here's what makes your paperwork useful to you and maybe useful to your clients, right? Um, so when you put all those components together, then it's like, oh, it doesn't have to be big and scary. It doesn't have to be a big deal. And it doesn't have to be this huge, painful task that I dread and that I spend hours on every single week.
I love that because so often I see, therapists talking about, oh my God, I've got 100 notes to do. And that just keeps building and piling up on top of each other. And once that starts to happen, that feels like insurmountable. Like, how do I come back from this? And how do I actually sit down and put this into my schedule so that I actually do it? And you're right. I think a lot of people associate like note taking and documentation to be like this laborious, long act that every note has to be unbelievably in depth. And we've got to create this narration and these summaries and explain why we're doing something because of insurance and medical justification. But it sounds like if you find a creative way to hit both or check both boxes, then it really alleviates a lot of that stress and that overwhelm too.
Yeah. Yeah. And just like you mentioned, I want anyone listening to know that if you are behind in your paperwork, because guaranteed a good percentage of people listening are actually behind in some paperwork as well, you are not alone. And most people feel very, very alone and very ashamed of that because it's not necessarily something you like call up your ethics board and you're like, hey, I've got 100 notes to do. Like, how do I figure this out? Because they're from 6 months ago or they're from last year. And if you're listening and saying, oh, I wish I only had 100 notes to do. Guess what? Like I've worked with everything. I've seen it all. And it is feasible to get caught up. But that in and of itself, even just that one thing is such a huge issue that so many therapists are dealing with. And I have people tell me they're literally staying up all night, like worrying about it, like can't go to sleep because they're stressed. Because what if somebody requests some kind of record or they do get an audit request or something? I mean, it's just it's a big reason why I continue to do this. Like I've had QA prep for 8 years, and I didn't necessarily start out thinking, oh, I'm going to help people catch up on paperwork as a huge chunk of what I do with this business. And yet it is. It's probably 50% of what I work with people on is literally just getting caught up on paperwork. And with that, staying caught up, right? Like avoiding having this happen again because it's so easy to get caught up in this cycle. And then that's when then people go into the shame spirals of like, I always do this, or I'll never be able to maintain this. And so a lot of what I do is, both practical, like hands-on tips, and then also like emotional support, right? And accountability. And um, it's one of the things where I really, really, really avoided doing groups for years. And yet it got to a point where I was like, I can't avoid it anymore because it's what people need. Having 50 people in a month talk to me individually about being behind on notes is not nearly as impactful as getting those 50 people in a Zoom room, right? Together. And they all get to see, oh my gosh, everybody else is dealing with the same thing. And so, yes, they're getting practical tips. Yes, they're catching up on paperwork. But the most impactful thing, hands down across the board, everybody says, is knowing, wow, I really am not alone. Like other people get it, what I'm going through.
And that's so normalizing in terms of human behavior and how we move through life. Because if we don't normalize it and we don't understand that other people get it, we internalize it, right? Like there's something wrong with me. How come I can't do this? Why is everyone else able to complete their notes or their documentation on time? And you're right. Then that shame spiral starts. And then that's hard to climb out of. And it sounds like, as someone who's not just giving logistical support, but the emotional side too, that makes a really nice combination because you could always give step by step instructions on how to do something and like practical implementation. But at the end of the day, if we don't have the emotional support and take care of the emotional need around something, it's really hard to continue to have momentum after we go through a course, we watch a training. For me, to be honest with you, step by step stuff doesn't even work in my brain. So, like, if I'm not having that connection with someone who's able to kind of like hold that space, share that story, give the give the normalization of like the human experience, I'm not really that invested in it because I'm just not going to be able to do it. So I'm glad that you said you're doing groups too, because I know for myself in my coaching, like 60-minute chunks of my time don't really work anymore with the amount of people I see. So group coaching is more powerful for that exact reason that you said. The normalization of like everyone's having imposter syndrome. Everyone's second guessing their decision to leave their agency job. Everyone is struggling to name their fucking practice or whatever the case may be. So like this stuff is totally a part of the process. And again, like moving away from the shame and the insecurity and more into the like, this can be okay. And we just have to work through this together as a team.
Yeah. And it's been surprising to see how many people being in the group, they'll hear, like, I have ADHD, I take medication for ADHD. It's been hugely impactful for me in a positive way to have that identified. And I did not get diagnosed until later in life, until my like mid 30s. So a lot of other therapists have that experience. I think especially because women also tend to be in the group that are diagnosed later on in life as adults. And one of the things I remind a lot of my group members about a lot is, okay, let's say I can just use my own example. I'm smart. I'm obviously a high achiever because I have my doctorate degree, right? Like a lot. I never thought of myself as outside the norm in that way. And then it's like I have these stupid little things I can't get done, right? Like I even just, I mean, still, even with medication, but there are certain things, right? Like I have this home security system that I've had for like a month, and because it didn't work the way it was supposed to work, like I still haven't called them to get it set up, right? That's just one example. Um, and when you talk to people who aren't neurodivergent, they're like, why haven't you just done it, right? Like, why don't you just do it? Like, just call, just get it done. Uh, And those of us who are, like, we get it, where those little barriers happen. But when you're someone who still has been able to be successful in life and do well in school, for example, right? You can think like, what's wrong with me? Why haven't I been able to do this? How can I be in a place of like, I can run my own business, but then I let something stupid go by the wayside, or I don't get my taxes done, like all these sometimes big and little things that come up. And so through all of that, it's just really important to remember that that we are like really high achievers and often are very, very hard on ourselves because we assume, well, I should be able to do this. This should be easy for me. Um, all other therapists can't be dealing with this the same way I am. It's easy for them. Why isn't it easy for me? And that's just not the case. Like you have to look at what works for you. And even with people being in I do a paperwork catch up group. So, for example, in that group, there are a lot of people who, after hearing other therapists talk about their experience, are like, I think I have ADHD. Or they'll say, I've been thinking for the last year or two that I might have ADHD. And actually being in this group prompts them to like make an appointment with a psychiatrist and see if medication might work. Because there are a multitude of strategies, as I'm sure you know, for dealing with neurodivergence. And sometimes we need a little bit of all of them. But sitting there and kind of avoiding admitting that and just giving ourselves a hard time about it and expecting us to just do better without actually admitting to what we need assistance with and getting that help. It's not going to work, and it's the thing that leads people. I mean, I can't tell you, every single week I meet with people who tell me I'm thinking about letting my license lapse because of the paperwork. I'd rather just do coaching. Like I love my job. I want to basically do the exact same thing I'm doing now, but not have to do paperwork. I mean, that's significant, right? And there are strategies. And then thankfully, like I meet with people and they'll be like, okay, for the first time I have hope that I can make this happen. But that's huge if something like that is impacting your work to that level. And if you're just sitting there expecting that because you've been able to do all of this schooling and be successful in all these other areas, you just should be able to do it. That kind of mindset doesn't end up helping you in the long run.
All of those are really good points. There's so much to unpack there. And I'm trying to think of what feels like most immediate to me. I think what you just said about people wanting to leave the profession, that comes from that internalized, like that shamefulness, right? And that thought process of, if I can't just do something as quote unquote simple as my paperwork, then clearly I'm not competent enough to be a therapist. And that is just simply not true. And for those of us who are neurodivergent, that means we have to come up with creative and adaptive strategies to kind of deal with the executive functioning that we lack in terms of the way our brain has developed and operates. And you're right, something as, insignificant to someone who may be neurotypical as like setting up an alarm system, but that can really start to build too, right? Like you see the box on your couch and you're like, I should call, I should call, I should call. And then you don't. And then again, that shame spiral can come up, or you just forget and you're doing a million other things. And then it starts to come up when it's not a good time to do it. I want to also talk about women being under and misdiagnosed. I mean, that's a whole thing. We could talk about that forever too. And, I think what really stands out to me though, is what you said about being high achieving. And so often we associate high achieving with high functioning. And I don't think we always see the behind the scenes of how hard the energy that it takes to be successful, the energy that it takes to have a business, the energy that it takes to overcome a lifelong disorder such as ADHD or autism, etc. And we associate high functioning and achievement, but behind the scenes, what if you're struggling with compensation elsewhere? Like you're struggling with that internal criticism or that harsh perfectionism, or like the energy drain from being successful just leaves you depleted, aside from business ownership. I think we really tend to like associate the two going hand in hand. Like I can only be as successful as my productivity. And if I can't be
Mhm.
productive, then what the fuck do I do? And who the hell am I? And, I think we think about that a lot in a society that places a lot of value on achievement and, and doing more and more and more. And what we do know about neurodivergence, right? The more we do, the more our brain works harder and harder to do these things. And then we leave ourselves kind of more vulnerable, which I assume a lot of these therapists are really struggling with, because then they start to feel really insecure and really a lot of imposter syndrome and a lot of shamefulness. And we almost lose those resilient skills to like combat those feelings and thoughts. It's hard. It's hard, y'all, for everyone listening that, is neurodivergent. We see you, like we get it. It's really fucking hard and you're doing a great job and you're probably masking day to day to like get through the day and look a certain way and perform a certain way. And I think what you said is really important. When you can identify and finally say, okay, this is what's been going on my entire life, that can be so freeing. That can be
Mhm.
really, really liberating to say, finally, I have an understanding of what's kind of going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. Yeah, it truly is. I mean, I know for me personally, I was diagnosed in couples counseling because yes, this stuff impacts like every part of your life, right? And it was one of those things where the therapist started asking me questions, and you can imagine we're like in couples counseling, and she's like, I might focus on one of you at a time, right? And so she starts asking me these questions, and she's basically asking me criteria for ADHD. And so as she's asking me the questions and I'm answering her, I'm thinking in the back of my head, I'm like, holy shit, do I have ADHD? And I'm like, having this little internal monologue as I'm answering her questions. And then like near the end, she asked, basically she was trying to see if I had, oh my gosh, I'm totally going to blank on the word, but like being able to focus for a really long time. And and then um, I was like, yes, I can hyper focus on things for hours on end. Right. And then she's like, so I think you know what I'm getting at. And I was like, yeah, you think I have ADHD? And she was like, yeah. And I was like, my mind was blown. And my specialty when I did clinical work was learning disabilities. So it's not like I'm not familiar with ADHD or didn't diagnose people with it frequently, right? But it's that disconnect of often we're not able to see it in ourselves until something comes up that kind of forces it. And because we are this high achieving type of people, like if you are a therapist, you are a high achiever. You have at least a master's degree. Like that is not normal, right? It's just not. So we expect a lot of things from ourselves and we just never think like, oh, well, I might have this. I mean, that was huge for me. And no, all the strategies don't work for me. But now I have a much better idea of where to go to get ideas for things or people that I can talk to who will understand specifically what I'm dealing with. And it was the catalyst for so many things in my life to improve. Like, for example, now in my own business in QA prep, um, I have said for years that I need a handler because I'm like totally the stereotypical entrepreneur of like, all kinds of ideas. I could start a new business every week. I could start a new, program within the business every week, that kind of thing, right? Like it is just never ending. And the struggle for me is sticking to a couple, like one or two things. um, and I finally hired a project manager, and it is some of the best money I have ever spent. And she's expensive. And it was hard to do that. Um, but it is so worth it to have. And so I joke now, like I literally pay her to tell me what to do. She'll send me a Voxer message and she's like, hey, just remember to ask people in the group today about, about this thing. And I was totally going to forget to do it. Right. So it's just one of those things where I'm like, does everyone need to pay for someone like this to have someone like this in their business? No. Right. Especially at the level that I'm at. Right. If you're a large business, it's probably useful, but no, everybody doesn't need that. And that's okay. It's something I pay for. And actually, it ends up making me money because she makes me more productive and she makes me, or she helps me not to waste time on different things that I don't need to waste time on and think ahead and plan ahead. And, but a lot of that is just me finally admitting if I'm going to be a business owner, this is the type of support I need.
That's perfectly said. I love that so much. And I can relate so much to that. And I hope some of you that are listening can as well. And I know when you're starting your business and if that's where your stage of life is right now, you may not be able to pay for support and admin support. But as you grow and as you make more money, I do encourage it because I have a similar relationship with my virtual assistant who is wonderful. And I could create a new business every day as well if she didn't keep me in check and was like, hey, stop sending or stop creating folders in Google Drive of like new ideas that you have. We are focusing on A, B, and C. And that helps me check myself. I'm like, oh yeah, like rein it back in, but still allow yourself to have that creativity. But I do think we need those strategies in order to support ourselves with things that are deficit areas for us because we struggle with them. So like I know I use the schedule, send, text, and email all the time because if the idea is in my head, I want to get it out before I forget it. And I think at one point in time, people were probably like, why the fuck are you texting me or emailing me at whatever time during the day or night? And it's like, I'm not trying to actually get a response from you. I actually need it out of my head or I will never see this again. And then I will forget. And then the next time we come in contact, I'll be like sitting there thinking like, I know there's something, but I don't know what it is. And that drives me nuts. So, all these little strategies. So you mentioned before compensation strategies to deal with documentation. What are some of those strategies that you find are pretty effective, especially for people with neurodivergence?
Yes. And I will give you all one that you can do for free right now, literally like with the next client you see. And most people will probably laugh or smile to themselves when I say this. End your sessions on time. So that is one. When I started working with people, right? Like I said, I didn't go out. I didn't start QA prep thinking I was going to be helping people catch up on paperwork, right? I thought I was going to be teaching them like how to write notes and all of that. And yes, I still do that. But as I started working with people, I realized so much of what ends up being a struggle is a struggle because we are spending so much of our time trying to be productive, burning out, not giving ourselves the self care that we need. And I know when I was doing therapy, like I needed that time in between clients for me. I didn't need that time in between clients to write notes. I did that at a different time because I needed the time just to either settle myself, to go to the bathroom, to get some water, right? Like there are just basic things you need. And so one of the most impactful things you can do is just end your sessions on time. Um, there are different ways to do that. So there are timers you can set up. There are alarm clocks that don't make noise, but have different like colored lights that shift so that you can have it in the room with you. You can also set alarm clocks that have, maybe like a nice meditation type tone to them that aren't like, bring like craziness that are going to scare you in the middle of a session. Um, but try those different things. And another way that I think is super helpful is tell your clients, right? So a lot of people are probably thinking, well, but I've always gone over time. And I've been seeing this, a lot of my clients for 2 years, maybe, right? And so they're used to it. Yeah, they're used to it. And that is not what they're paying you for. They're paying you for whatever time, 45, 50 minutes, typically, whatever you do. Um, so you can tell them, hey, I know we typically tend to go over time, but this week I'm starting to end our sessions on time. And so use that language, tell them that you typically go over time. You're again reframing for them that you actually aren't supposed to be getting this whole 60 minutes, right? And we're going to start ending our sessions on time. And that's where you can introduce, if you get one of those like light alarm clocks or something, hey, so you'll see this, change to purple or whatever when we have 5 minutes left, or so I'm going to let you know when we have 5 minutes left. And that'll help keep you accountable if you let your clients know right off the bat, hey, I just want to let you know we're going to end on time. Plus, it's just good if you are used to going over time, your clients aren't going to expect it. And they're going to be like, whoa, I thought I had 10 minutes left to kind of, regulate myself before I leave or before I'm done. But that one thing impacts so many other things, because if you give yourself that time throughout the day, even like I said, don't feel like you have to fill it with being productive. Like just give yourself breaks. Just start with ending it on time, ending sessions on time, give yourself those breaks in between clients. Then you can maybe work into like, maybe you could do notes in between session. Maybe you could answer emails or phone calls or whatever. But don't make it about being productive. Make it about giving yourself the time that you need to either digest what just happened in a session or prepare for the next session. Or like I said, just take care of your physical body, like whatever it is that you need to do. And then at the end of the day, you will feel better. And you might not feel better the first day. Like it takes time for you to adjust to that. Um, But this also makes me think of, I attended this like a more personal training. And the guy who was running the training, he said that people always come up to him. He's fairly well known and are like, "Oh, you know, you must be so busy." And they'll often like kind of apologize for wanting to ask him a question, right? Or come up to him and say like, "Oh, I'm sorry, you must be so busy." And he's like, "No, I'm not." He's like, "Why would I want to do that? Why would I want to be busy?" And it was so refreshing to hear this like very successful entrepreneur type of person like say like, "I'm not busy. Like, I'm not busy on purpose. I don't want to be busy. I want to have time to enjoy my life, you know?" And so if ending your sessions on time is one of those things that helps you feel like that you need to be able to take that breath and not be rushing back and forth the whole time you're working.
Yeah, I love all of that. And I know so many people, and I used to do this myself, who stack client on client on client, right? Like 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. Okay, I'll take a lunch break. Or maybe I won't take a lunch break because I just overwhelm myself for so long that all I can do is like lay here in my chair and then see 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock without, like you said, a break to go to the bathroom, a break to get up and go outside, a break to go let your dogs out or let them back in, or like eat your lunch, God forbid, or like any of the things that we don't often do. And if you can reclaim that time throughout the day, even if it's like 10 to 15-minute increments in between sessions, and at the end of the day, you come up with a full hour or hour and a half of that time that you've gained back, your brain is going to thank you. Your body is going to thank you. And in turn, you're going to have more energy to do the things that you maybe don't want to do, like documentation and call people back and stuff like that, because you're not going to be beyond your capacity anymore. And also, like, I think naming the fact that you're no longer going to go over session is also a way to model boundaries, but it's also a way to normalize that you as a therapist also sometimes struggle with boundaries, and that you're like, hey, I've been doing this thing. We're going to actually move to this thing because this is actually how we were supposed to be having the way we should be doing this all along. And now we're going to change this up. And I think it's really important to just have the language so that you can relay that so the client's not surprised, right? Like you said, so that you don't just cut them off 10 minutes earlier than they expect to be cut off. And also, it allows you to kind of work through some of the struggle that you may have around setting boundaries around your time, and just having that value behind your time too, knowing that like after a certain amount of time, if you're an insurance therapist, insurance stops paying you for these sessions. Like, so you're giving a lot of therapy away for free, or you have a client in the waiting room like waiting for you to end your session, and there's a lot that goes into that. So I think that's a really good tip, and one that feels maybe simplistic, but in reality is really hard for people to do. And really hard because now we're talking either time blindness or boundary setting. And both
Mhm.
of those things can be challenges for different reasons. So, really having these strategies to compensate. And I like the idea of like an alarm that changes color or something like that. So it's like, okay, this is more soothing than, like you said, just an alarm that just starts blaring or buzzing or going off. And then your client's like, what the hell is that? Um, I always keep a clock on my wall, like where I'm facing and out of my peripheral, so I can keep an eye on time as I know we're getting closer. But time is not something I've struggled with in my life. I'm too sensitive to time, probably. But for most people who are really struggling with time management, I think that's a great strategy. And again, buying yourself breathing room, and then the tasks that feel menial, that feel like a chore, that feel like an extra add-on, they become a lot more doable at the end of the day.
Yeah. Yeah. And it kind of talks to another thing that I'll often mention, which is buffer time. So, yes, you will maybe in a week have one client that will need to go over a little bit, right? But if you kind of have that built in, that most of my clients, I end my sessions on time, I have time to recover. Then, when that one client does need to go over, or they ask you at the end of the session, like they need some type of form or filled out or whatever, and you have to talk to them about that, then it doesn't become this thing that you're like trying to quickly finish up with them because you already have that buffer time built in. Like, okay, I can, you know, extend this by, 5 minutes or whatever. And that doesn't mean that now my next client is 5 minutes late, which then pushes et cetera. And I recommend that for all of your scheduling, like literally build in buffer time, because one of the things, with being time blind, which is definitely one of my struggle, is that you think you can get things done in a certain amount of time. And often that doesn't happen. And so that's okay. It's not something that you have to beat yourself up about. But once you can admit that to yourself and say, it's totally different to be like, okay, I'm probably being overly optimistic about this. So let me build an extra hour around, this. I mean, there are different strategies. There's also, Parkinson's law, which is that if you give yourself 2 hours to do it, you'll spend 2 hours. And if you give yourself 5 hours to do it, you'll spend 5 hours. Um, so you have to limit yourself at some point. But in your schedule, like your actual working schedule, have time in your schedule for like general admin time. Have time in your schedule specifically for notes. Notes are never part of your admin time. They are a completely separate thing. But most therapists I know build their schedule around having admin time. And so if you do that, 100% of the time, you're going to do emails, voicemails, everything else you could possibly do before you're going to do your notes, right? So you got to have notes time and admin time, and then build in some buffer time there too, so that you can plan ahead for those weeks when life happens and you have a migraine one day and can't sit there and write your notes. But oh, okay, I have this extra hour planned on Thursday or Friday or whatever.
I love those strategies and that advice. And like you said, don't beat yourself up if that's something that is a hard thing for you to do. Lots of strategies in order to kind of help you manage. If you really struggle with time blindness or like, I think I have an hour, I'm going to get it done, and that hour turns into 3 because of the distraction, because of something else that came up that became exciting, because of just plain forgetfulness. Put a movie on, put a song on that like this album finishes in an hour, this movie or this show finishes in an hour. Once it's over, I know the time is up. There are lots of strategies to kind of prompt you, to kind of let you know, like, okay, I know that we're getting close to time to be done with this task. And break your tasks down into littler steps too, if it feels like the bigger task is too overwhelming. I do like the idea of separating admin time and documentation time. However, I think that's really important and a really, really useful tip. So I think all of these are really useful. And I think it's a good way to change your perspective on something that maybe feels really overwhelming and potentially really monotonous. I know for us neurodivergent folks, monotony is pure hell sometimes. So I think we need to be able to figure out creative strategies to make monotonous tasks feel a little bit less heavy or burdensome too. And I just want to thank you for coming on and talking about this stuff. I think it's a topic that often doesn't get covered, or it's glanced over, or like you said, creates a lot of shamefulness. And I like the idea of really normalizing the fact that a lot of people struggle with this and you're not alone in that. And that's the whole concept of this podcast in one form or another for everyone listening, is you're not alone in this. Like, life is hard, life is messy. And even on the outside, we can make something look a certain way, and on the inside, it can look very differently. So just don't beat yourselves up for this, but definitely make sure that you are hiring someone like Maelisa or someone else in the field that's really helping support not just the practical side, but the emotional side. And I think the combination of the two is really important.
Yeah, it is.
Um, just as we're wrapping up, just please tell the audience where they can find more about what you are offering for QA prep, and how they can access your services. We'll also have that information in the show notes so everyone has that available to them.
Yeah, I tell everyone you can check out my stuff really easily by checking out the free private practice paperwork crash course I have. So it gives you some quick and easy templates to use, and it's broken down into like 5 to 10 minute videos. So if you just want to help around notes, you can just watch those videos. If you just want help around treatment plans, that kind of thing. And that is qaprep.com /crash -course. So it's pretty easy. It's all over the website too. If you just go to qaprep.com, you'll find a place to click on the crash course. So that's a good way you can kind of test out if you like my training style. If you are looking for more support, I would say start there first. And if you need more, then I do consultations, and we're also going to be doing in August. So I'm not sure when this will release, but we'll be doing this probably on an annual basis, a summer paperwork blitz. So that's going to be a week of co-working in the mornings, where other therapists are there, and we're all just working on notes and getting stuff done together. And it's crazy, but having that support, having that community is huge for your motivation. So make sure you're following my stuff so that you can get that notice and join us. That will be a free offer in August.
Very, very cool. And that's an awesome offer. I may have to join that.
Yeah.
So qaprep.com, and then qaprep.com/crash/course. Is that it?
Yeah. Crash dash course, like a little hyphen.
Crash.course. It'll all be in the show notes, I promise, now that I
Yeah.
just confused everyone. But yeah, I appreciate that. And I appreciate these resources very much. And I appreciate you making the time to come on here too.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. And to everyone listening to the All Things Private Practice podcast, new episodes are coming out every Sunday with interviews with great people like Maelisa and other people in the industry. And you can download, subscribe on all major platforms. Make sure to share it with your friends. And we will see you next week. Doubt yourself. Do it anyway.